Hello, this is Russ Walden with Father's Heart Ministry, and this is the Morning Light Daily Bible Study. Today we are studying Genesis chapter 10, Genealogies of the Human Race after the Flood. In Genesis 10, we read a comprehensive genealogy of Noah's three sons. Most people find these lengthy lists of unpronounceable names as insignificant and they just pass them over. But on the contrary, in the record of these family lines, there are tantalizing clues relevant to many central themes in the Bible. Therefore, studying them and making a note of them will assist us greatly. So let's read Genesis chapter 10, the entire chapter. Now these are the generations of the sons of Noah: Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And unto them were sons born after the flood. And the sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Javan and Tubal and Meshach and Tyrus. And the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. And the sons of Javan, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim. By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, every one after his tongue, after their families in their nations. And the sons of Ham, Cush and Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Raamah, and Sabteka. And the sons of Raamah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod, and Nimrod began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, and the city Rehoboth and Calah. And reason between Nineveh and Calah the same as a great city. And Mizraim begat Ludim, and Anamim, and Lehabim, and Naphtuhim, and Pathrusim, and Casluhim, out of whom came Philistim, and Caphtorim. And Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, and the Amorite, and the Girgashite, and the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sinite, and the Arvadite, and Zemarite, and the Hamathite, and afterward the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. And the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon as you go to Gerar unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom and Gomorrah, and Admah, and Zeboim, and Lasha. These are the sons of Ham after their families, after their tongues, in their countries, and in their nations. Unto Shem also, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth, the elder. Even to him were children born. The children of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Arphaxad, and Lud, and Aram. And the children of Aram were Uz, and Hul, and Gether, and Mash. And Arphaxad begat Selah, and Selah begat Eber. And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Now, there are those that believe that, in the young earth theory, believe that the continents separated during Peleg's lifetime. And Joktan begat Almadad, and Sheleph, and Hazar Maveth, and Jerah, and Hadoram, and Uzal, and Diklah, and Obal, and Abimael, and Sheba, and Ophir, and Havilah, and Jobab. All these were the sons of Joktan. And their dwelling was from Mesha as you go to Sephar, a mount in the east. These are the sons of Shem after their families, after their tongues, in their lands, and after their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah after their generations, in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. So, genealogies. A lot of people find them very daunting, but the deeper you study them, the more powerful truth they will bring to your understanding. So let's take a deeper look. In verses 1 through 5, we find, of course, a more greatly detailed genealogy of Japheth, Noah's second son. Japheth's descendants are often referred to as the northern peoples. They settled what became Western Europe and the Russias. Japheth's name means opened. Now that's very interesting because the great open societies that modern civilization owes such a great debt to arise from the line of Japheth. If you are within the parameters of a white race, then we would consider you from a biblical context to be descended most likely from the peoples of Japheth. Now, it's helpful to make a mental note because of the mention of Gog and Magog, because of the part Gog and Magog play in the prophetic theme of the scriptures. In Revelations 28, Gog and Magog are predicted to be the military might behind the final Antichrist battle after the millennial reign. In history, Magog is located to the north of Israel in the land now encompassing the borders of the former Soviet Union. Verses 6 through 10 list for us the children and generations descending from Ham. Ham is the second son of Noah, who we saw in our last chapter. Ham perpetrated an immorality against his father Noah, and as a result, Noah cursed Ham's youngest son, Canaan. Now, it's a little known fact, but Canaan was not Ham's only son. There are 3 older sons, the eldest being Cush. So Canaan was cursed, but the other sons that did not suffer under the pronouncement of Noah against Canaan, they were not cursed. And Cush's descendants established Egypt and the African peoples, and also Nimrod, who initiated the golden age of the Babylonian Empire. So for whatever reason, the curse of Noah, because of Ham's violation, was limited to Canaan. And Canaan was not a black man. Canaan was the progenitor of the peoples of Canaan, or Canaanites, the Canaanitish nations, who were the ancient and sworn enemies of the people of God. Again, we find it necessary to underscore this information because misinformed and bigoted people falsely conclude that Canaan's curse to be a servant of servants is a divine edict justifying the enslavement of the African people. There are 2 theories that white supremacists adopt. One of them is Cain. The mark that God put on Cain was to make him a black man. Well, if that's true, he put the mark so nobody would abuse Cain. So how could you justify that as the mark being producing the black races, and the black races have been abused using that scripture, which says don't abuse anybody with this mark, so you can't justify that. And then that the curse of Ham's youngest son, Canaan, was to produce the black races that have been abused so much. That's not true either, because the black races did not come from the youngest boy, Canaan. They came from Cush, the oldest son, and he was not under a curse. We need to not only correct this in our own thinking, we need to be prepared and know how to correct it in the thinking of others, because it's much more prevalent than we'd be comfortable admitting. Canaan's descendants became servants of servants because the Hebrew slave generation out of Egypt conquered them as the 7 nations that were conquered when they crossed the Jordan. just as Noah predicted, which had nothing to do with African or dark-skinned people. There is no validity to searching in vain for scriptural justification for bigoted and ungodly disdain for people of African descent. Ham's eldest son Cush was father to Nimrod. Now, who was Nimrod? Nimrod was the founder of Babylon and the leader of the project to build the Tower of Babylon that God intervened to stop. The phrase, mighty hunter before the Lord, that was a moniker attached to Nimrod, can also be rendered a mighty hunter in opposition to God. Several Jewish traditions teach that Nimrod and Abraham met one another in battle, where Nimrod's numberless army was destroyed by an army or a plague of gnats that Abraham conjured against him with God's help. That's not biblical fact, but it is an ancient tradition, and therefore it's worth mentioning. In verses 11 through 20, we come to the descendants of Shem. Now, interesting that the oldest brother Shem is only mentioned last in this case. It's mentionable in chapter 10 that instead of recounting then the genealogy of the firstborn Shem first, the genealogy of Japheth and Shem were narrated. Thus, in Matthew 20:16, Jesus said that the first shall be last. And being the firstborn, this last mentioned reference to Shem is a connection to the blessing upon his family line from which Abraham, David, and ultimately Jesus came from. Shem's name means son of renown. It is a literal equivalent of Israel. Jacob's name changed to Israel, which meant Prince of Nations. The name Shem is where we get the word Semite or Semitic or anti-Semitic, because from the line of Shem, Abraham and the Hebrew nation was brought forth. Shem's name is connected with piety toward God, and one ancient tradition believes that when Jesus rose from the dead, that Shem was one of the ancients that resurrected and were seen preaching in the streets of Jerusalem in Matthew 27:51-53. Shem is also believed, this is very important, to be the Melchizedek king of Salem who met and made a covenant with Abraham in Genesis 14. And this is entirely possible because Shem was still alive at the time that this meeting took place on the plains of Mamre, if you study the genealogies. This being a fact would define the Melchizedek order as the order of the family ordained by God in Eden, passed down from Adam, began by God as the father, who had no father and no ending, passed down to Adam all the way down to Shem, and Shem, still alive when Abram met this character named Melchizedek. Shem was in effect the federal head of the human race because he had a direct line of descent from Adam and was therefore the patrilineal head of the human race. Now it's interesting, incidentally, that extra-biblical sources cite Shem as killing Nimrod in an attempt to thwart the evil agenda behind the building of Babylon. So what would be the implications of Shem being Melchizedek? Because he, as the head of the human race, stood for God before Abraham in Genesis 14 and ratified with a covenant meal God's favor and planned destiny for Abraham. Then hundreds of years later, Jesus, as a direct descendant of Shem, sat with 12 men and ratified this covenant and enlarged it at the Last Supper and enlarged it to include all who believe. And we call this the Lord's Supper, and we celebrate it as communion. So I trust that you can see the power of studying these genealogies, because you and I have been grafted in, regardless whether you descended from Shem or Ham or Japheth. You and I took a quantum leap out of our lineage into the patrilineal connection and context of being born again, connected with Jesus, so that his history his lineage. His grandpa's your grandpa. His daddy's your daddy. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that we are partakers of the authority that began with Adam, passed down to Abraham, to David, to Jesus, restored in the Garden of Eden, that you and I might subdue, that we might take authority and understand that Satan is not the principal. God put the dread and the fear of us in Satan. He's afraid of you because he's a beast of the field. Now go back and watch the teaching from Genesis 3 if you want more information on that. But you have authority over everything that creepeth on the earth, and he's one of the creeps. Are you listening? God bless you. We will return with Genesis chapter 11, which, by the way, when this was originally broadcast, we're traveling in ministry. Therefore, there will be no broadcast until a week for the next 5-6 working days, which will put us on a Tuesday, a week from this coming Tuesday, that the broadcast will return with Genesis chapter 11. We're really happy that you're connecting with us. If these studies are being a blessing to you, send us an email. Russell Walden, RUSSELL, WALDEN @gmail.com. We want to hear from you. If they're touching your life, if you find them beneficial, reach out and make that connection and let us know that you and I are one of the same tribe in God. God bless you.